Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
And I'm Tavi, and today we're reviewing My Little Everdell.
Today we're reviewing My Little Everdell. And in case you're like, what is this game? How I have not heard of this game? Well, that's okay. I just found out about it a few days ago. My Little Everdell is the family-friendly version of Everdell. To those of you who have played Everdell, the worker placement tableau building game, this is an accessible version of it. It's going to capture the same general mechanics of the game, the same general aspects of how the game plays, but it's going to give it to you in a much more accessible format as far as dialing down just how complicated the experience is to make it accessible to, well, the box says 6+. How old are you?
7.
7, so it seems to work. Do you think it works for you?
Yeah, and there's also starter cards for little people to help them.
There are indeed starter cards. You may notice that in the setups over here, Tavi has 2 starter cards. I do not. That's to help balance around. If you want to play it with your kids, you want them to have a bit of advantage, you can give them starter cards. And yes, you can give them multiple starter cards in theory. Depends on the player count, but you have enough starter cards. You could give them extra to help balance out the experience to keep you invested without having to dial back how hard you're trying, while also giving them that edge. But let's... Go ahead.
And as well, there are, like, green cards that activate every round, but
well,
this
so let's
is a red card which does not.
So let's talk about, let me talk about the general structure, and then I'm going to have you explain each card type, okay? So, in My Little Everdell, the general idea is like the, and I'm going to talk about this as if you don't know Everdell, and we're going to go strive into it. The differences I'll highlight, I guess, a bit more at the end, but the general idea of, in My Little Everdell, across 4 rounds of play, you're going to be placing your workers. You have 3 workers, each faction has 3 workers. You're going to be placing your workers in order to gather resources, and then you'll buy a card. That's the turn structure. Place a worker, buy a card. Place a worker, buy a card. So, for example, Tavi has already started off by rolling the dice over here. You're going to be rolling these dice every round, which will give you some degree of variable worker placement spots in the game. And then Tavi immediately went there in order to gather 1 of each resource type, and he should, because that's one of the best possible spots you can have.
And it's only the only thing.
Yeah, and then on my turn, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing exactly, and I'll go ahead and place my worker there, taking 1 of each resource type as well. But the part we missed, Tavi, is when you're done getting resources, what can you do?
You get all...
You can buy a card.
Card.
Buy a card. So go ahead and buy a card. Which card do you want to buy?
Can I buy a card?
Actually, you probably can't buy a card, not with those. Ironically, the cards that we currently have in the meadow don't allow him to actually purchase a card, so he will not be able to buy a card. But take your second turn. Go ahead and take your second turn.
Alright.
Well, you can place your second worker. So Tavi's going to go ahead and place a worker. And now that these 2 spots are exhausted, we have these general spots, which are always available to everyone. Well, these are limited to 1 per person. These are available to everyone. Go ahead and do so, Tavi. Again, we're not actually playing, so don't take too long thinking it through. Yep, okay, a wood, and now go ahead and spend 2 wood to buy which card? What are you buying? You're buying the swimming hole. Okay, each person costs you 1 berry less.
So this princess is costing me 3, but now it's costing me 2.
We will go through that in a second, but basically that's the turn structure. You have 3 workers. Every single round, you're going to go ahead and place your worker in order to gather various goods, various berries or amber or wood, and then from there you're going to go ahead and buy 1 of the cards in this meadow over here, and you're going to do that 3 times per round. That will trigger the end of the round, and you'll repeat that for 4 rounds total, and that will be the end of the game, at which point you'll add up the points on the top of each card, as well as the points on the parade, which we'll come back to shortly, as well as any points you earned across the course of the game, and that's the way you play the game. Some aspects to touch upon, which we'll go through all shortly, but starting off the bat is you have different types of cards. There are going to be 5 different types of cards in the game. Tavi, do you want to explain each of the 5 colors of cards, how they work?
So, green ones, they respawn every single round.
So a green card is going to activate when you buy it, and again at the beginning of each season, giving you a bunch of extra resources, so that keeps your production engine going. How does a red card activate?
It activates only when you put someone on it.
So they give you effectively extra worker placement zones to be able to get more effective turns than just taking a single amber or whatnot. What about the gray ones?
The gray ones happen the minute you get them.
The minute you get them, and that's it. They're one-time use only. You get them, and then you're done with them.
But you can't spawn them again if you put your guy on it.
I don't believe that's true. You cannot do that.
Oh, I think that was happened.
Nope, that's only the red cards. What about the blue cards?
The blue card...
Blue cards kind of give you abilities. So it's not only that they give you something, they give you an ability. So for example, the blue card you bought, Tavi, over here, is the swimming hole, which is a building. It's going to go on the building side of your board, and it makes each person cost you 1 less. Cards come in 2 types, people and buildings. And then lastly, we have purple cards. What are purple cards?
Purple cards are like they...
So they're kind of a version of abilities. They just give you points for different things. So purple cards are heavily focused on giving you points, and they're going to give you points for different criteria. Sometimes they'll just give you straight points. Other times they'll give you points dependent on different types of, or more buildings or parades or different things. Speaking of parades, Tavi, can we talk about the parades? How do you earn the 5 parades? The
5 parades.
The 4 parades. How do we earn the 4 types of parades?
This one, get 5 buildings. This one, get 5 animals.
This one.
Get 1 of each type.
And this one.
Get 3 of one type.
Now, all these parades over here are going to give you points, but getting there first is important because they are worth progressively fewer points as you go through the stack. So getting there early can be a difference between winning or losing as you try to gather as many points from parades as possible. And that's basically the game. You're going to be trying to build up your engine by placing your workers, using those resources to buy cards, trying to be mindful of the production engine as well as your ongoing abilities as well as the point scoring, trying to be mindful of the parades so you can maximize your score through clever use of combining your abilities and what you're going for in order to gather those, trying to pair those up with purple abilities to get as many points as possible, and that's going to be my Lil Everdell. You're going to do that 4 rounds, add up your score at the end of the game, and that is basically it. You're going to be moving this moon track over here at the top along the board every single round. That's going to be the 4 rounds of play. And that is everything happening. The last thing I want to cover is what Tav mentioned already, which is the fact that at the beginning of the game, you could give the other players these green cards, these helper cards, that will give them a little bit of a boost so that they start with a bit more of a production engine up and running. And that's the game.
But what is this? I think you've known it is the starter player.
That's the first player token. This will be passing back and forth between the players every single round.
Which I guess is what you've known it was. It is a S-U-N.
An S-U-N. It is indeed an S-U-N. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review part of things. So, Tavi, this is my Lil Everdell. You have not played regular Everdell before, and by the way, let's do a quick recap before we get into the opinions. As far as differences between this and regular Everdell, in case you're interested, regular Everdell is going to focus a lot more complexity between... What's it doing? Between the regular level is going to have a lot more complexity between the actual card play, as well as more worker placement zones, as well as this aspect of critters inhabiting houses and things like that. It has the core gameplay loop of this. It's 4 rounds with seasons, all that, but a lot more complexity in terms of how you take your actions, how you stagger and earn more actions with more places to go. It's the same core experience. This has the same core features you'd have in Everdell, but distilled down to its bare grass roots of the gameplay. So, Tavi, what did you think of my Lil Everdell?
Good.
Good? Anything else, or?
It was really fun.
What did you like about the game?
That you're like getting jewels, gems, everything, and paying, and everything. It's also fun, like the cards, they look funny, cute. And if you want to know, there was an owl doctor. There's an owl doctor? Where's the owl doctor? In the deck over here? Let's see if we can find the owl doctor. But what like in terms of the gameplay, like so overall you went into the game, you're doing worker placing, you're placing your workers, you're gathering stuff. Where's the owl doctor? Now I'm kind of intrigued. Owl doctor, wanderer, dragon doctor. Here we go. There's an owl doctor. There's an owl doctor indeed. So, in terms of the gameplay itself, you're placing workers down, you're trying to gather resources, you're trying to build things out. Like, what were the general... What did you not like about the game? Not like... Was that it was hard... It's really hard to get the parades. The parades.
You really have to get the parades. Yeah, you have to work a little bit harder to get the parades over here. They require different objectives as far as getting those there. But past that, anything specific you want to talk about? Liking and disliking?
Specific? If you want to know how to get 5 coins...
Yep.
First, once you get 5 ones, turn it into a 5 coin.
That would work. Yeah, so overall, as far as the game goes, this manages to capture, at least my own opinion of the game, this manages to capture the feeling of Everdell very well while being heavily accessible to younger gamers. Tavi joined into it for the first time and just was able to pick it up right off the bat, just being able to understand, okay, great, place a worker, gather some goods, build a building, and get that engine up and running. He generally understands the various cards, how they interact with the game, and for the most part, he's able to figure out, okay, great, well, I want to get this, this wood production up and running so I can go ahead and buy those buildings, and I want to get the berry production so I can gather those people, and I want to gather those abilities. Like, you're first, like, off the bat, even just going through this experience over here, Tavi's first card he picked out is a swimming hole, which makes every single person cost you 1 berry less, which is an excellent first round pick, and he understood that going into it. He understands already the strategies of just generally how to play and how to try to figure out what is going on in this engine to gather as many cards as possible and build up your engine. It captures all that while being very accessible, but it also does give you less of an Everdell experience. So for me, I think overall, my overall opinion of my Lil Everdell is it looks beautiful, it's charming, it's very easy to play, plays in around 30 to 40 minutes tops or so. It depends on the player count, I guess, but around 30 to 40 minutes. And it has the simple, charming accessibility of Everdell, well, the simple, charming aspects of Everdell, with the accessibility dialed in because of how they removed a lot of the extra things, and it gives you a fun experience. I enjoyed playing this. I had fun playing this. Anything?
Yes. So if you want to know my favorite cards, it is the jail and the pirate ship.
Why the jail and the pirate ship?
Because they are the most, like, realistic.
The jail over here, we have the jail. After you play a person, get a random food, and the pirate ship, which you can go ahead and put a person down to get any 2 resources of your choice. But yeah, so it gives you the Everdell experience dialed down, very cutesy. I think that it does dial back the depth of Everdell. Well, it has to dial back the depth of Everdell. But for me, this falls in the category of a game that I would thoroughly enjoy playing. Thoroughly enjoy playing with my kids. I thoroughly enjoy playing with my family. I think it is an excellent, highly accessible game. Maybe we'll do a gameplay at some point. We'll do a gameplay video. But it also does compromise on the Everdell experience. Meaning, if the question is, would I play this with adults? The answer is no. I'd rather play it with kids because that's where the target audience is. I very much enjoyed it with kids, but I also like the complexity of Everdell a lot more. So overall, I think this is an excellent family game. I think this is an excellent, charming introductory experience to worker placement. I think it gives you worker placement in a very solid way that just is lots of fun too. It has the art of Everdell, it has the appeal of Everdell, it dials back the experience so that it is more accessible than Everdell. But overall, I think My Little Everdell is a great family weight worker placement tableau building game that will give you enough decisions to be meaningful and interesting without being the complexity of a full adult-based game. Any other thoughts?
So, do you want to know the best way to get a die that has skulls?
What's the best way to get a die that has skulls?
Look on top over there.
Okay. Okay. But anyways, any other thoughts about Everdell?
Everdell? So, the best part is that, like, so, the most thing I usually got was wood and these gemstones.
The amber? I think it's called amber. I'm not actually sure if it's called amber. But in any case, that is it. That is Everdell. My Little Everdell, highly recommend this one. If you like the world of Everdell, I highly recommend picking it up. The only person I would not recommend it for is if you're playing it with a bunch of, fully adult gamers. This is a kids game, but it's one of those, it falls in the category of one of those kids games where I'm more than happy to play it. I generally don't rate kids games quite as much because it's a weird rating system. I think this would fall into that, 3.5 category as a game itself, but as a kids game, it is incredibly accessible, so it's a weird aspect. For the target audience, this is great, and I couldn't be happier with it. As far as this is a game that I'm going to pick over other games to play with my game group, not as much, but that's not the target audience for it. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
And I am Tally Radcliffe.
And I hope you have a good one.